Hey everyone, so great to see you again. It's Judy from Coffee, Cookies, and Books. And well, what we've got today is a review of all the books that I read in round 2 of Tic Tac TBR. Okay, so I'm ready. I got my coffee. Very much appreciate my coffee this time in the morning. And it is early in the morning that I'm coming to you. Very, very good. Okay. Actually, let me put it on this side. Kind of keep it a little bit out of the way because I'm terrible. I do tend to knock things over. That's a whole story in itself. Okay, so we are going to do the reviews for the books that I read that were part of round 2 for Tic Tac TBR. There were 6 books in total. Now, I don't know if I have them in the exact order that they were pulled, but I do remember the prompts that they were associated with, so I will tell you that all ahead of time. Okay, so the first book that we're going to start with was actually the first one that was pulled, and that was Hollow Kingdom by Kara Jane Buxton, and this was for the prompt of 9, nah, make it a 10, choose a 5-star prediction. And this was 5 stars. This was 6 stars. This was so good. Okay, so this is a story about a domesticated crow that has to make his way with his companion, hound dog Dennis, in a world that has gone to hell. So it is like an apocalyptic type situation where all of the humans are dying, the entire species. So all that's left are the animals. Now, the main character's name is ST, and ST stands for shit turd. Not a joke. That's his name. And he refers to humans as mofos. And that means mother effers. Okay, because that was what his owner, Big Jim, used to call a lot of people, right? So he was adopted by Big Jim. Well, I think he was rescued actually by Big Jim when he was still a baby because he had been, I think he'd been abandoned or injured or something along those lines from what I can recall. And Big Jim basically nursed him back to health and kept him. And he became a domesticated crow, and he knows certain words. So he understands English. Okay. So the book is from his perspective. Okay. Now, not just his point of view, there are additional added points of view from other animals across the planet, the odd time they're interjected in the book. But it is ST's POV that is the freaking best. Now, I did an immersive read, so I did the audiobook and I read this one. And I can tell you that it was the best experience. It was so freaking good. The guy who did all the voices was fantastic. Not sure who that was. Sorry. I don't pay attention to that stuff. I just listen, read, and whether or not I enjoyed it from both perspectives. And I actually really did. It was so good. Oh my gosh. Just purely, it had, I think, a little bit of everything. It was funny because it was from a bird's point of view, and you felt that it was from a bird's point of view. She wrote it so brilliantly that it's like, you know, you're a bird in this, okay, but you never think that you're just a bird. I don't know if that makes sense, but it was just how she wrote it was so good. Now, there is a second book called, I think it's Beautiful Creatures is the second book, and I will be getting the second book 100%. I loved this so, so much. And I think that it had funny moments. I mean, come on. That, like, the name gives that away. You know, ST, shit turd. It's just like so funny. And him with Dennis, the hound dog. And Dennis is a typical hound dog, you know. And they're rescuing pets. And it just is such a journey through the whole book. It was really good. Yeah. I mean, I can't say enough about it. 100% recommend. I think that anybody who it did have the cozy vibe, but then it had very sad, poignant moments in it, and yeah, it had a little bit of everything. Such a good book. Can't wait to read the next one, if I'm being perfectly honest. I have heard nobody talk about the next one. Now, the person that recommended this to me was Kim, of an Oasis book. I follow her religiously. Her and I are friends, and she said, Judy, I think you're going to love this, and I do. So kudos to her for recommending it to me. And then I have seen maybe one or two other people actually mention this book, but it's highly underrated. Highly underrated. Okay. Yeah, that's all I can say. And nobody has talked about the second book. I don't know if it's just that nobody's read it. I don't know. But yeah. Oh my God, it was so good. Okay. So that was that one. All right. So the next one I read is Booked for Murder by J.C. Eaton. So this is I guess what you would call a traditional cozy mystery. And this is the beginning of the Sophie Kimball set series. Now, I'm not sure exactly how many are in the series. It's not a small series. As far as I can remember, I think there are probably, oh my gosh, 10? 9 or 10? There's quite a few. And I think that one just came out. I could be mistaken, but I think one just came out. It was very good. Or the author wrote a new series. I don't know, but I loved this. This was so good. Now, I did only give it a 3.5, but 3.5 for me for a cozy mystery. 3.5 and a 4 is right up there with I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. But it's not, a 4.5 and a 5-star. Those are reserved for books like this, right? Yes. So this was really still very entertaining. So, and as the first book in a series, I thought it jumped off the series really nicely. Now, Sophie she's not a police officer, but she has worked for a police department for a very long time. And her mother, now she lives in, where is it? Minnesota, right? So she's in Minnesota. And her mother is in Arizona, Tucson, I think. I could be wrong, but I think it's Tucson. And there have been a variety of people passing away in her mother's community, which is kind of a area that is retirement, and her mother thinks people are being murdered. Okay, so her mom is like, you need to come and you need to help, because she works for a police department. Although her mother doesn't seem to make the distinction between police department and an actual police officer, which I think is hilarious, and it does make for a very interesting relationship between mother and daughter. Okay. Mom is she has her mindset. She's like, this is what I want. This is what you need to do. And you need to come and help. And the guy that she works with, Nate, I think his name is older officer. He's a detective. And he says to her, he said, go. You haven't taken a vacation in how freaking long. You go and call me if you need anything. Okay. And so off she goes to Arizona to help her mother. Well, figure out what the hell is going on. And of course, when she gets there, she does find out that, so they think that the murders are related to a book that they're currently reading in their book club, which is, I thought, that's why it says booked for murder. I thought that was hilarious. And so what Sophie does is on the way there, she starts reading the book. Now the book it's like self-published. Nobody knows who the author is. There's only a few reviews of it. So that was kind of the part where you kind of know where this is going, okay, a little bit. But I will say that a part of what you think is going to happen happens, but not in the way you think it's going to happen. That's the best way that I can describe it without giving anything away. The ending was brilliant. I would say like the first half of the book, so it was like a 300-page book. So the first half of the book was kind of slow, a little bit moving, introducing characters. I think that's kind of typical when you have a series starting. But the second half was stellar, and I loved the second half of the book. So, her mom, Harriet, she's a hoot and a half. And where the book ends off is in a spot like Sophie's situation is going to change. And that's where the series kind of kicks off from there. Of course, she does solve how things have gone down, but it's not quite how you would expect it to be. It was actually, the ending was hilarious. It was hilarious, okay? It was so good. I loved the ending of the book. So, I think it was worth sticking with it because, like, I would say, 100 pages in, I'm like, well, this is going to take off. What's going to happen? And then it started to really roll along because I think once you had all those characters down, so I think, it was another one of those ones where there were like a ton of characters introduced, but a lot of those characters they fall by the wayside because they were kind of part of just this story. And then you have your key characters that are remaining, which would be Sophie, Nate, who is a police detective. He is going to play a role going forward. And there is a young guy who is a computer genius who kind of works in the background. So he's working with them. It was just really good. And then, of course, her mom, Harriet. They can't forget Harriet, right? So 3.5, did enjoy it. And I will be continuing on and getting the next book for sure. Now, I don't know if the next book, I can't recall if this is on Kindle Unlimited or not. Let me just do a quick check. And let's see if we can figure out if this is on Kindle Unlimited. We're just going to look the book up. Because I know that a lot of cozies are on Kindle Unlimited, but I just can't remember if this one is or not. No, so this is not Kindle Unlimited, okay? So I, of course, have chosen to go with the print version because I prefer the print version over the ebook version. So that's just me, and I will be getting the next one. Okay. All right. And did I say what this one was for? I don't think so. No. So Booked for Murder, this was number 6. Yeah, 6. So choose a book with a serial killer. So I chose this because it was kind of that and kind of not that. But that was how the story ended up. I went based on the description on the back. Okay? All right, our next one is Soul Searching by Lyla Sage. Now, this was picked for number 1, which was One is a Lonely Number. Choose a book with a 2-word title. Soul Searching, 2-word title. I gave this one 3.5 stars. It was pretty much a typical contemporary romance for me, outside of the fact that she could talk to ghosts. Okay, that did actually play a fairly large role in the book. So she is a photographer, and what's happened is she has essentially lost her job, and lost sort of her mojo. That's like the best way that I can describe it, along with her ability to talk to ghosts. She can still sense them and see them there, but they're not talking back to her. She's always had the ability to have a relationship with ghosts. Now, throughout the book, you learn certain things about the way that ghosts are perceived, how she sees them. Her sister, who is her twin, Clark, also sees them. So I think Clark's her twin. I could be wrong about that, but I think so. Anyway, so you see that there is that dynamic there because her sister has the same ability. Now, she just because she's lost her job, she's out of money. She decides to come home, and instead of moving in with her parents and her mom, like anything like that, she takes a small room above a furniture restorer's place where she can kind of have autonomy, and she works for him. Okay. Now, he is a little gruff, but not really. I mean, I actually found his personality at the beginning of the book really boring. Okay. He did improve as he went along, and I don't know. I don't think it was just his relationship, but you got a little bit more of who he was as the book went on. And so there's not really what I would call a deep story outside of her trying to figure out why she is having this hard time. Obviously, the ghosts aren't talking to her because she is at a juncture in her life, and you follow that. So that I found to be the most entertaining part. Now, there are a few other characters that I quite liked. I actually really liked her sister, even though you got not a ton of her sister in the first half of the book. You kind of got more of her in the second half. And that was because the two of them weren't talking because they had a bit of a disagreement. And then her parents were lovely. And then there was this old man, Boone, who lived out in the middle of the boonies. He was someone who she had a very close relationship when she lived there. And, you know, that he was a great character. So there were a lot of outside element type characters, and the ghosts played a certain part, particularly one or two ghosts played a certain part. So I thought it was lovely in certain elements of it, and then I thought it was also a bit boring in other elements. So that's how come I gave it a 3.5, because I did really enjoy it, but I didn't love it. Okay. But I did like it enough, and I'm curious to see what she's going to do with her sister's character, Clark, because Clark has a very different personality to Collins. Okay. Collins is your free spirit. She's a photographer. She has a lot of creativity. She's a bit robust, whereas Clark is very, you know, regimented and yeah, very different. So I'll be curious to see what she's going to do with Clark's character and with the whole ghost thing. I thought the ghost element was lovely. I think I had seen a few reviews of it where people were like, oh, the ghost thing was, no, I thought it was very much an integral part of her and her personality. And it was a very deep part of the book. Like very deep, but in a very different way than when you say ghost, okay? Very different way. Okay. So I think that's important note to get if you're going to go into reading this. Okay, so that's it for this one, and we're going to move on to the next book that I read. Okay, so the next one I read was The Homewreckers by Mary Kay Andrews. And this one was picked for 8 out of the gate, the 8th most recent book I've purchased. So this was one of the ones that I purchased based on where it was in the list on my library. And I think there was this one, and there was Summers at the Saint. They were kind of back to back. So this one was lower on the list, closer to the bottom, and then Summers of the Saint was next. So obviously that one's going to get read if it gets picked again. Anyway, I gave this 5 stars. Okay. Absolutely loved this book. Now, I shouldn't be too surprised that I loved it, because I read Big Likes Big Christmas, I think was the name of it, at Christmas by her. Now, it's a shorter book. This one was quite robust, but there's a reason this one was a little bit longer. And I really enjoyed Big Likes Big Christmas. I think I gave it 4 stars. It was just such a sweet book, beautifully written, loved the characters. So I went into this hoping I was going to get a good book, at least a 4-star read. And she blew me away with it. Honest to God, no lie, just did not expect what I got with this, okay? So the main characters are Hattie and Cass. Hattie, Cass, Mo, and Trey, and Tuck. So Hattie is your main female character. Mo is your main male character. But there is like minimal romance, okay? But they are very important. Now, what Hattie is she owns a construction company with her father-in-law, Tug, okay? And she's a widow in the book. What they do is they do restoration work. So they buy homes that are the older historical homes, and they refurbish them and they sell them, and they do a wonderful job. But that's not all they do. They do other construction projects. So she's working on this one particular house that just isn't working out the way it should, and everything's going wrong. And this guy, Mo, comes along, and Mo is a producer who works for, I guess, like your living channel type, like TLC, that sort of thing. And he comes up with this idea that he would love to do a show like Saving Savannah. So it's like the idea of taking an old house and redoing it. So what happens is she's very reluctant at the beginning. She doesn't really want to do it. Cass, her best friend, kind of talks her through it. Now, Cass is also her site manager, I guess is a good way. So Cass actually works for her and Tug, and has, worked for them for a really long time. But I think that, Cass is kind of her. Hattie tends to jump into things, and Cass is kind of her mainliner, right? And she kind of keeps her in check, her reality check. That's what Cass is, her reality check. And so she finds this one piece of property because she has to find a property really fast for this show. Okay? And she finds this piece of property, and it basically goes up for auction because the person's passed away, and nobody makes a play for it within a certain period of time. So the city auctions it off, and she gets it for a penny, like super cheap. All right. So they don't pay a lot for the property, but they have a budget, of course, for the show, and they have to get it done in a very short period of time. But what ends up happening is they find a body on the property. Well, they find bones. Okay, body on the property. And there is a murder mystery built in behind, everything that's going on. So the murder mystery, along with the relationship building, stellar. Okay, such a good book. I thoroughly enjoyed it from beginning to end. There wasn't, and then there was a relationship, but that was the played a back role, sort of a back seat to everything else. It was just so good. But really, really enjoyed it. Can't say enough about it. I just, it didn't shy away from the idea that, a murder, like the murder itself was kind of gruesome a little bit. Not badly gruesome, but it fit the way she wrote it, and how it all got figured out, and the person who did it, not even on my radar at all. Okay. It was like, huh? That was who did it? Really? So, yeah, really well done. Loved it. Highly recommend. 5 stars. Yeah. And an unexpected 5 stars. I just want to add that. All right, so next one was Everyone on This Train is a Suspect by Benjamin Stevenson. And this is the second book in the Ernest Cunningham series. And I chose it for the number 4, which is 4 Rhymes with Floret. Choose a book with transportation on the cover or in the book. And this is all about a trip on a train. Okay. Now, the main character, of course, is Ernest Cunningham. There's him and his girlfriend, Juliet, and they have been invited on this writer's retreat on a train that goes across Australia. Now, is it the Gone, I think? Anyways, it is a bit of a luxury vacation, so very nice. And they get on this train, and there are a number of authors on the train. And then they also do have readers accompanying them, some of them, and they make these stops in certain places along the way, and they give talks. But one of the writers, who is the one who Ernest enjoys his books quite a bit, well, this particular writer ends up dead, okay, and not in a positive manner, right? Of course, the difficulty is they're all on a train. They're all stuck on this train, and until the train stops, they have to stay on the train. They, of course, don't want the readers to know what is going on, and this McTavish guy, who is the guy who's passed away in an unhealthy manner, he is they're kind of all wondering who did it, because it had to be one of them, right? Had to be somebody on this train, because it couldn't have been anybody else. So I just loved, and I really enjoyed the way it went through it. Now, what did I give it? I gave it a 4 star. So yeah, I enjoy the way that Ernest's brain kind of works. There is never sort of a boring part. Now, I did an immersive read again with this one. I had the audiobook, and the guy who does it, he's got an Australian accent. This sounds so great, because you really can put yourself in, and he does all of the other accents really well. Now, there are parts of it that are hilarious. Okay. There is, I don't want to say too much, but there is one part, I guess at about the 70% mark, where there's a scene, and it was, yeah, there is a scene in it that just, I laughed so hard. Okay. It just was the funniest freaking thing. But the way it's written, you could actually picture it happening. And it made me think of like a little bit of Indiana Jones with a cross of Tom Cruise from Mission Impossible. Kid you not. Okay. It was so freaking good. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, I did really, really enjoy it. I think that now I have not read the first book. Okay. The first book I have on my Kindle in Kindle Unlimited, and I do plan to read it 100%. I'm going to read it. But I would say that you don't really have to, because I did read the Christmas one, never felt lost. Not really. They do reference back to what happened to him in the past, but they don't give anything away at all. But you don't feel, I didn't feel like I was losing too much outside of the fact that now I really want to read the first one. Okay. Because of the references that are made. It's like I got to read the first one. Okay. But I don't feel like I really missed too much. All right. So, yeah, I've really, really enjoyed it very much. And can't wait to read the next one. And I think there's a new one coming out, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, I would read anything he writes because so far it's 2 for 2. Okay? Yeah. Okay, next one is No One is Supposed to Die at This Wedding by Catherine Mack. So this is the second book in the Eleanor Dash series. I read the first book in round 1. Okay. I apologize. There's some construction going on out there, and every now and again they're cutting something. I don't know how it's coming through. That was just it right there. So sometimes the mic cuts it off, sometimes it doesn't. So I'm just going to mention it. Okay. Anyway, yeah, so this was, now book 1, I think I gave it 4 stars. I gave this one 4.5. I would say that I liked this one better because the problem with the first book was it felt like there were too many characters and got a bit too chaotic, and I lost a bit of track, even though I really enjoyed the book and enjoyed the story. This was not as much of an issue. It still had a lot of characters, but it had certain key characters that you already knew. All right. So I would say you do not go into this one. You have to read the first one. So unlike Everyone on This Train is a Suspect, this one you absolutely have to read the first one because I think you would be a bit lost if you didn't read the first one. Okay, because you do get a lot more in depth with Eleanor, who is our main character, her sister Harper, who's very important, the love interest for her, which is Oliver, and then Connor, who's the guy that she wrote her books about, one of the main characters in her books, but he is a real person, okay? And he is also in this book. Somehow he ends up in this book. So, yeah, and then what happens is her book that's discussed in the first book, her first book is being made into a movie, okay? And she is there during the making of the movie, and her best friend plays her, and her best friend's fiance plays Connor's role. And they are getting married for real, in real life. And so they're in California, they're in Hollywood and LA, and they decide that they're going to go to Catalina Island and they're going to have their wedding there right after the film wraps up. Okay. And so they go there and things start to kind of unravel and a person ends up dead. Okay. Now, how the person dies is a little bit questionable. And then the second death is a little bit questionable. But it almost looks like, again, like somebody's trying to kill Eleanor when it's not really supposed to be her. And yeah, so it all kind of goes, again, it's a very much like whodunit, but this is in a more closed environment, whereas like the first book was Italy. You're in Italy, you're on vacation. Could be anybody. Could be anybody. But Catalina Island, so basically there's a hurricane coming, or kind of the tail end of it. So they're supposed to get hit. They're still doing this wedding, but everybody else has been evacuated. Okay? So they are in an isolated setting. That's what this book takes place. So it's much more isolated this way. I thought this was a perfectly great murder mystery. I thought it moved along and was paced beautifully. And I liked all the characters even more when I came out of this book opposed to the first book. So I would say that this was a bigger hit. That's why I gave it a 4.5. Wasn't quite a 5-star read for me, but that doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy it really, really well. I just wouldn't put it up there with like Homewreckers and Hollow Kingdom. Those were kind of like my top tier out of this batch. But this was pretty darn close, okay? And as a second installment, fantastic. The third one just came out. Can't remember what it's called, but it just came out, and I will be getting the third one 100% for sure. Okay, that's how much I enjoyed both of them very much. So, and I actually like Catherine Mack's writing. I feel it's very it's easy to absorb, it's easy to feel. Now, the one thing that I will say, the first book, so this book has a thing, this one not as much, but there are footnotes, okay? And they're at the bottom. You can see them here. I don't know if you can see them close enough. The footnotes are kind of the main character, Eleanor, her thoughts, okay? Because the entire book is written from her point of view. And they are throughout the book. Now, I will say that in this book, they are like, they're every now and again, they're not as much as the first book. In the first book, there were a ton of them. If you don't do the audiobook, they're very disruptive, and you might actually miss them as you're reading through. You'll think, well, what's the footnote for, right? Whereas in the audiobook, the footnote comes up when she's thinking it, okay? So it took a bit for me to get into it, which is one of the reasons I marked the first book down a little, because I found that annoying. I would have thought it more annoying if I had only read the print book, okay? But I can't do audio by itself. I have to do audio and print together, okay? So I do immersive. 100% would recommend either just the audiobook or an immersive read, okay? Because I actually think it's kind of fun that it's footnotes, and the way it's done, I appreciated it much more when I got to this book. So that's the only thing that I would want to say is kind of a negative. And if that annoys you, you might not like either of the two books. Okay, so that's it for round 2. Okay, and I'm going to tell you already that I've already finished round 3. And a lot of that's because of my vacation. I was able to get in there. This I actually finished well before vacation, and I had started the round 3 books already, and I have already finished round 3, and I've almost finished round 4 and 5, if I'm being perfectly honest, okay? But of course, the Tic Tac TBR videos will go up first, and then the reviews will go up in behind. So I did just post the Tic Tac TBR for round 3, and that went up. So the review is going to go up after this one. So round 2 is first, and then round 2 is going to come up right in behind it because they're all done too. And I finished my first round of Kindle Unlimited, although those are going much, much slower. Okay, so that's it for this review, and I guess we'll see you in the next review.